you all have the link to the challenge. So we'll get started here. So my name, as was mentioned, is Emily. I work at Hennepin County. Thank you again for inviting me. This is all very exciting. My grandparents grew up, I grew up in my grandparents' home in Linden Hills, so right a couple blocks away from Lake Harriet, just north of all those lovely shops, and Wild Rumpus was like my stomping ground back when I was a kid. So love the area and happy to be here with you all talking about the Plastic Free Challenge. Before we get started, just a quick overview of what I want to talk about today. So I'll introduce you to what the Plastic Free Challenge is, talk briefly about plastic recycling. That's a common question we typically get. There's going to be an interactive quiz, so I hope you all will participate in that. And then I'll just wrap up with some of the results from our previous challenges and answer any questions. So to introduce me just a tad bit more, my name's Emily, Hennepin County Environment and Energy. I'm technically an environmental educator, but I also do a lot of communications for a lot of our different programs in the department, including for this online Plastic Free Challenge. So excited to be sharing it with you all. Some basics. What is the Plastic Free Challenge? I understand some of you are familiar, but others may not be. So it is an online month-long challenge. It takes place in February, as Daniel mentioned. So it takes place February 1st through the 28th. It's all about reducing your plastic consumption, especially of those single-use plastics, in ways that most best fit your lifestyle. So I'll mention it again later on, but this challenge is not about eliminating plastic. Plastic is very pervasive in our lives, in many different areas of our lives. So there are different actions we can take to reduce the amount of plastic we're using, and just being conscious of different plastic items and how to reduce those. Some people get scared. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't possibly eliminate all of the plastics that are in my life, but focusing on some smaller actions just to reduce the amount that we're using. As I mentioned, the challenge is entirely online. So like I mentioned too, I'll put a link in the chat, or somebody else, if you can find the link, it's just hennepinplasticfree.ecochallenge.org. So I put it in the bottom of this slide here, but putting the link in the chat would be fantastic. We host it every year in February. So this is our third year hosting the challenge. And I've just pulled a few screenshots from the website here to walk us through. You can take the challenge individually, but I overheard you'll be starting a team, which is the most fun way to participate. You get to encourage your fellow teammates to be involved in the challenge as well and earn points that way. So the challenge does have 70 actions to choose from in 7 different categories. So once you sign up, you can explore the different actions, create your profile, browse through all the different categories, and then you can check off the actions that you already take, and then select up to 5 one-time actions and 5 daily actions to help you work through eliminating or reducing plastic in your life. Once the challenge begins on February 1st, you can then log back into the website, mark off the actions that you've completed, and earn points that way. And just to walk a little bit through some of the actions. So each action is a little square on the web page, and it has a learn more button, which I really encourage you to explore when you sign up. There are a bunch of links in there for more resources, ways to help you complete that action, learn more, and complete those actions throughout the month. We do also work with our partners to spread the word. So they involve their communities, they host events, they start teams. This is just a screenshot of some of the partners that we have for this year, and that this list is still growing. So we're still accepting new partners. And speaking of which, I'm not sure if your neighborhood community group would like to be a partner, but we are still accepting partners. It's completely free. The only thing we would ask of you is to spread the word, which it sounds like you're already doing. So if you need a direct link to how to sign up to be a partner, I can definitely send that your way, but the information is all on the partners tab on the webpage. So it'd just be a short form that you fill out, share your logo with us, and tell us how you'll share the challenge with your neighborhood and friends and family. And I do want to point out as well, on the resources page, there are how-to videos, how to see someone colored on my screen. Is that a red line there? Can others see that?
Yeah, I can.
That's okay. Maybe we'll just leave it there for now. If I can figure out maybe how to clear it all, clear all drawings. Ooh, I think I did it. Okay. Sorry about that. So on the resources page, there are videos, there are PDFs you can download, there's imagery if you want to share on social media, as well as tips if you're a team captain, or just how to get started with the Plastic Free Challenge website. So all of that's on the resources page. And then just very briefly about what's going to happen during the challenge is, of course, you can sign into the webpage and mark off those challenges or those actions that you've already completed, and you'll earn points that way. There's also a feed on the challenge website, so you can type in your accomplishments, and it's really cool to see what other people are doing by reading through the feed. And we at Hennepin County will also be sending 3 emails per week, and those just dive in deeper depth about the resources and the tips to help you stay motivated throughout the challenge and learn even more. So I started at the county just over a year and a half ago. So this is my second year participating in the Plastic Free Challenge. And I can say I personally learned a lot just being involved with it. So even if you are early in your journey or far along in your journey to reduce plastics, anybody is definitely welcome to join the challenge. There are, and I mentioned it before, so this challenge is not about eliminating all plastic. It's about choosing some areas of your life where you can reduce the amount of plastic that you're using. And you can also filter the actions by difficulty level. So if you're looking for easier actions or more challenging or advanced actions, you can sort of determine your own course and pick your own path, if that makes sense. So you can challenge yourself or work on the things that are low-hanging fruit and easy to take care of. So I'll just pause here briefly if there are any questions so far. If there's questions in the chat, you'll have to read them out to me.
Nothing in the chat so far.
Okay, well, I will move quickly along here because these are some of the most common questions and things that we talk about during the challenge. Is people are confused about plastic recycling. So that's one of the ways into this challenge, that we try to encourage people to learn more about plastic recycling. And of course, like I mentioned too, there's plenty of other actions, but plastic recycling is one of the ways that people want to be involved in this challenge. So I'll just share a little bit more about this. So first, before we dive into this, we need to talk about plastic in general. What is plastic? Plastic is a hugely broad term for a wide variety of materials with different chemical makeups, characteristics. In the US, plastics are divided into 7 different categories. And those are those numbers 1 through 7 that you see printed on products. Those numbers are called resin codes, and they look like recycling symbols. So that little triangle with the 3 arrows going around is confusing because it looks like it says, oh, this is a recyclable item, which it actually does not mean. What it means is that it's telling you what type of plastic that item is made of, but it's not telling you whether or not that item is recyclable, which is horribly confusing, and no one likes it, even in our industry. But the reason is all of these numbers mean that plastics have different additives, different melting points, different ways that they were created. So there's different levels at which they can be recycled, all the way to they can't be recycled, all the way through they can be recycled, and there's good markets for them. So just here in Minnesota, things that are accepted for plastic recycling are, as a general rule, you are able to recycle plastics number 1, 2, and 5 in your curbside recycling bin. So that would generally be plastic bottles, jugs, cups, containers, any of those items that you see depicted on the screen that have that code 1, 2, or 5. Those will be accepted in your curbside recycling. And that's because those items all have good markets for them to be turned into new products. And what I like to mention here is that we want to really try hard to avoid wish cycling. And that's the practice of putting something in the recycling because we want it to be recyclable. We hope it's recyclable, but we're not quite sure. And wish cycling is damaging to the recycling process because it can contaminate your recycling and actually lead to lower quality end products. So we want to make sure we're not putting anything in the recycling if we're not sure if it's recyclable or not. And that's something that confuses a lot of people. It's really hard. Unfortunately, if you're not sure if something's recyclable or not, it should go in the trash. And that's just an unfortunate side effect of recycling, is we really want to make sure whatever is ending up in the recycling is able to be turned into a recyclable product. So some examples of things that are made from recycled plastics. I just have a few examples here on the screen. Plastic lumber. So those are often used in like Adirondack chairs or picnic tables at parks. Textiles for winter gear or carpet. Also the like straps that go around pallets or lumber. So all of those are made from recycled plastic. So some people too ask about recycling prep. How much prep do you have to do before you put something in the recycling? So generally, you should prepare your plastic containers by making sure they're empty. So that means either scraping them out or giving them a quick rinse and then replacing the plastic cap if it came with a plastic cap. So plastic caps on their own are unfortunately too small to be recycled on their own if they're not attached to a plastic bottle. So they would end up falling through the recycling equipment and end up going in the trash anyway. However, if they're attached to the bottle that they came with, then they'll make it through the recycling equipment and be properly recycled. So that's just a little reminder to you all. And then just to walk through just a couple of the items that are not accepted in recycling. So this is, of course, a pretty broad and confusing list as well, but generally styrofoam is not accepted in plastics recycling. Number 3, PVC plastic. Number 6, polystyrene plastic. Any of those squeezable pouches like Capri Sun is not accepted. Black plastic is microwavable and is not accepted in plastics recycling. Any sort of what I call odds and ends, like plastic toys, coat hangers, ice scrapers, sunglasses, plastic utensils, all of those are not accepted in plastic recycling. And also just a note, anything that held a hazardous waste is not accepted in plastic recycling either, since it can't be properly cleaned. So any questions there? That was a lot. So now, yes, I see a question.
I've got one. Yeah, the caps thing made me think of this. So is there ever an example where something will be labeled with a number, but it won't be the entire unit? So like, I never knew that caps counted. And the other thing I'm thinking of is like those to-go salad containers or lettuce containers where they have kind of plastic film across the top, but the rest is recyclable. And I guess I'm just curious, is like, if you see it anywhere in the container, is that pretty much an indication that you can just recycle as is?
I don't want to answer fully without seeing like what specific product. So I would say generally that if an item is like you're able to separate it into 2 separate parts, like that plastic or the salad container you were mentioning, each of those parts has to have its own plastic recyclable number on it.
Okay.
So a company, whatever company was putting that product together, could use 2 separate types of plastics for the top and bottom. I would hope that they wouldn't do that, but I would say look at each individual item on its own.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question too.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I noticed when you were going through your larger presentation, you were talking about looking in the closet. So I'm just wondering about, you showed what they're making with the plastic bottles, which is polar fleece, and polar fleece isn't polar fleece one of the primary contributors to microplastics going in the water in the wash?
That's a really good point and very observant. And yes, the items that so clothing items that are made from recycled plastic, correct?
I mean, some are worse than others, right?
Microplastics.
I mean, aren't some worse than others? Like, isn't polar fleece worse than like outdoor clothing that they've woven very tight? Is that true at all or untrue?
I'd have to ask somebody about that specific question. I can have somebody get back to you. We have some waste reduction recycling folks who.
we try not to buy polar fleece anymore, except for one of my children is allergic to wool, so it becomes a problem in winter to stay warm. But or she buys it through a secondhand store if she wants to buy something like that. So a way of not buying new products. But it's just curious to me because some of the products that they are showing, like I think like the wood, the plastic wood, maybe that doesn't put the same amount of microplastics. I'm just curious, like, does that shed microplastics too? Or is that
Specific with the clothing, yes, anything made from recycled plastic would shed microplastics, yes.
But what about like the Adirondack chairs and the picnic tables?
I mean, probably. They would take a much longer time to degrade though.
Yeah, okay, well, that makes sense. But I always think of polar fleece as the very worst thing to purchase at this point. Just curious, just commenting.
Yes, thank you for that. That's, yeah, very observant and good point. If you are buying those things, I would say buy them secondhand, like you'd mentioned.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Number one, why do they have to make the lids or the caps or the tops to various plastic containers different than the container itself? Why don't they just make the whole product the same plastic? And then number two, why can't we look at creating a more easily read recycling unit on the bottom of recycling products so people don't have to figure out what they should or shouldn't, be recycling? Why do the two items have to look so similar and create that kind of confusion or hesitation? Just make a simpler system.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Yes, I agree. I wish I knew who to contact. I mean, I think that that's something that should be looked into, and somebody should be advocating for policy changes that would lead to changes in our recycling system. That's beyond the scope of the work that I do, unfortunately, but I would definitely recommend you look into that more, research what organization could potentially have some sway in that field. It wouldn't be Hennepin County, it wouldn't be me. I wish I knew more. I agree with you though.
Sure. And just like the plastic utensils and the black food containers too. Why do we even have to have them on the planet if we can't do something with them? So that's my comment. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We need people like you who are raising those questions. Are there other questions, or can we run through our quick interactive quiz? This, I encourage you to just yell out what you think the answer is. I'll show you a few potentially recyclable items, and you can yell out or say in the chat if you think that the item is recyclable or not. So we'll go to our first item. This is a styrofoam clamshell takeout container.
No.
No, correct. This is trash. Next is this black plastic utensil.
No.
Correct. This is trash. Very good. I'm loving the interaction. What about this one? This is plastic jugs, bottles.
Yes.
Yes.
Correct. These are all recyclable items. This black plastic, which I was just mentioned.
No.
No.
Unfortunately, no, it is not recyclable. It's trash. However, it can be reused. So I know a lot of people, if you end up with a black plastic container like this, reuse it as a Tupperware container, reuse it to put leftovers in. So highly encourage you to reuse it as much as possible before throwing it away.
Could I ask a quick question?
Yes, please.
Okay, so you're encouraging people to reuse the plastic, but are we sure it doesn't have any PFABs in it or whatever that stuff is we're trying to avoid with plastic? Because it's cheap, right?
That's my question also. How clean is it?
I mean, I would never use that because I'd be afraid of it. Of course, I don't usually end up with things like that, but
I appreciate that question. Yeah, I can't answer that question right now. I need to look more into that.
A lot of work to do.
Okay, our next one. This is a plastic bag which was holding paper towels.
Yes.
This one is a trick question. So I will say it is not recyclable in your home recycling. However, you can take plastic bags to a store drop-off. For example, I know lots of grocery stores, Target has drop-offs where you can bring plastic bags. You can also bring them to our Hennepin County drop-off facilities in Brooklyn Park and Bloomington. And just make sure that they're dry and free of any residue, but they can be recycled at those drop-off locations.
And is it true that, and the plastic wrap that our news periodicals come in, the newspapers, those are not recyclable, correct?
Are they stretchy? I'm sorry, I don't get newspapers in bags. Is the bag stretchy?
No. But I understand they're not recyclable.
I will write down that question and get back to you on that. I'll have to ask our staff here.
All right, thank you.
Yes. The next item here is this very small condiment container.
I think that's a 6, right?
Yeah.
Correct. That says
no.
number 6 on it. So that's correct. It is not recyclable. It is number 6. That was very observant. So that's polystyrene, which is non-recyclable. And it's too small anyway. So even if it were made of a recyclable plastic, it would fall through the equipment and not be recycled. So this is trash. And our final quiz item is this plastic cup.
Compost.
Correct. This was a trick question. This is a compostable plastic cup. So it would not be put in your recycling, it would be put in your compost. Okay, we got through that. So I just want to share very quickly, since I know we're kind of running short on my time here, just some results from our previous challenges. I'm not sure if you can see if there's this odd gray bar at the top. I apologize for that. But last year in 2022, we had the highest participation we've seen in this challenge. We had 1,100 people participate in the online challenge. So they completed over 8,000 actions, over 4,400 pounds of carbon dioxide emissions avoided, over 2,000 pounds of packaging waste avoided, and you can read the rest there. But we were really excited to see all these results, and we're hoping to have higher participation this year. As I mentioned, we did do this challenge in 2021 and 2022. So those two small graphics on the right show the difference between 2021 to 2022. So we grew in the number of participants we had, grew in the number of actions that they completed, shrank in the number of teams, but maybe we can see more teams this coming year. And cumulatively across both years, we prevented over 6,000 pounds of carbon dioxide from being emitted. Almost 6,000 cups, containers, cutlery, and other small plastic items from being used, and over 3,000 pounds of packaging waste avoided. So that was all very good. And I will mention too, what's fun about the challenge website is it automatically calculates the impacts of the different actions that you're taking. So it in the impacts tab on the website, it'll show you real-time impacts as the challenge goes on. And I see somebody has their hand up. Can I answer a question? This is actually my last slide, so I'll just put this up there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I am learning something. One of the things I've learned in the last few minutes is that those little tiny little plastic things that even if you wash them and attach the lid, I shouldn't be putting them in my city recycling, which is kind of a bummer. So it makes me wonder if what percentage of recycling of materials that are submitted to the city for recycling fall out as trash. Do you know that? Because I'm seeing that, probably, I don't know, maybe 20 to 25% of mine, turn out to be like those black things. I've been putting those black things in my recycling.
Yeah, that's a good question, which I'll have to ask. I don't know what percentage of recycling ends up that's sent to the recycling center ends up being trash. I don't know that specific number, but I'll ask for you.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm. I know I'm over time, so I'm just putting up my information here. If you want to contact me after this, please feel free. And I have our social media on the bottom of this page. That would be the best way to keep up to date when the next challenge is, and be sure you're following us there.
Thanks so
Stop
much,
sharing.
Emily. This is great.
Yes. Thank you all for having me. Is there anything else I can
you.
answer right away before I hop off?
I have one more question, which is more comment. I have 3 daughters, so, over the years, they've gone through a lot of clothing because they seem to like clothing. But as, as they've grown older, it's become obvious that so many things are made with less and less natural fibers, and it's really difficult to find anything that's not made with plastic fibers with plastic content.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering if there's any possibility that the state or anyone would be interested in looking into something like that, because if we're not provided with options, like I usually find cotton clothing, but it's not that easy if anyone's gone to the store and actually read the labels to find clothing that is without plastic fibers, like mostly plastic fibers.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
I mean, it's pretty
I think-
frustrating because,
Yeah.
we're putting that into our waterways.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Let's say as much as possible, purchasing reused items from secondhand stores would be the better option. To
I
avoid
just
having,
there needs to be a mandate where manufacturers can't manufacture with primarily plastic fibers. That's just my opinion.
yeah, I can appreciate that. Yeah, we definitely need folks like you who are engaged in this topic to be speaking out about it. So I think the more people who are saying something, the better chances that there are going to be actual changes coming in the future, I would hope.
take it to the legislature.
Well, thank you so much for coming, Emily. This was a super informative chat. Thank you for spending your night with us. This was really great. And I think hopefully we'll have a lot of participants. I think everyone should see the sign up link in the chat. If you don't, just let me know. But hopefully we can get a pretty good group to participate and bump that team number up again this year.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing you all in the feed. Let me know what your successes and challenges are there, and I'll be taking a look there. All right.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks,
Have a
Emily.
good night. Bye.
All right. So I had said that John was going to give an update on MN 350. I don't see him on though. I will maybe just kind of poll the group. If anyone is interested in an update, I did get an email update from their director today. I haven't read it, but I can just forward it on. Does anyone who wants to see that maybe just want to raise their hand or speak right now, and then I can send that right after this meeting. Connie, perfect. Connie, Becky, Bill. Okay, I think I got everyone. Perfect. Okay. Okay, the last thing I wanted to cover then was just get the pictures out of my view. Was to talk about these priorities. Let me know if everyone can see these clear. I guess let me know if you can't see them clearly. So kind of to bring everyone up to speed, because there are some new faces here. Last time we met, we tried to map out what our committee is currently working on, some things that we had talked about, had already talked about, hoping to work on in the next year, and then kind of potential ideas that people were coming up with last meeting or more recently that we really hadn't coalesced around. And we tried to map them to kind of 4 high-level trends that we saw in the community survey, which kind of fit with ENS. And so we were hearing that neighbors were excited for LHiNC to be focused on these or wanted to see more focus on them. And there were like a number of comments, but I kind of just tried to distill it down into kind of some high-level trends that we could get ideas that matched with. So they were working with native habitats, environmental education, pollution control, and then what we called like local sustainability. So kind of stuff outside of the environmental side, more on the sustainability side. And I know they kind of all overlap, but that's the best I could make sense out of the comments in my head. So then this month, I just brought these up here. And what I wanted to go through tonight was looking at all the initiatives that we have listed. Stages are either they're in progress, so people are already working on obviously trolley path, William Berry Woods, Ward 13, currently being planned. This plastic free challenge maybe goes into in progress this month, but that's kind of there. Again, use of the Henry funds, and then proposed. So these are things that we've talked about in the last 2 months, but haven't made progress on that I know of. I also then tried to just put down rough timeframes to guide when we need to focus on these and committee members who are involved. I know some of these have more people, but I just wanted to, put kind of the people that I knew of right off the bat, and try to put whoever wants to kind of have ownership over these initiatives outside of these monthly meetings, so we know who is going to be driving these forward. So I'll maybe just stop there quickly. Does anyone have any questions on kind of my thought process here? I'm thinking we can walk through this now, see who's excited to work on any of these, and then once we see gaps, we can think about prioritizing certain projects over others to make sure that we're covering what we want to cover based on what people are interested in and based on people's capacity.
I'd just like to interject one thing quickly. I've tried to communicate desirability of looking at the blue-green algae problem with, in Harriet and other nearby lakes.
Yes.
Anyway, you can hopefully take that into account.
For sure. Bill, I thought that would fall into working more closely with the Lake Harriet Environmental Council. So I'll just put maybe you here, and I think John might fall here too. Do you think, I know you had said that, or I think after they came on 2 months ago, did you plan to follow up with them, or did they plan to follow up with you on the blue-green algae?
I believe the Lake Harriet Environmental Council, Sally Gillette was going to try to coordinate with me, but I've also talked to Matt Linden at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and to Rachel Crabb at the Park and Recreation Board. So I've got a lot of input at this stage, and I'm just going to follow up with some of their suggestions. And when I have enough information to share with the group and a sense of maybe some recommended direction, I'll try to outline that.
Great. Okay, I'll break that out. Sorry that wasn't on here already. But yeah, we can definitely have that in a separate line. So I'll add that after this. Yeah, Jennifer.
So I am curious if we have any data on the amount of trees that have been lost because of emerald ash in our community. I know we lost 2 of them on our lot, huge trees, this past summer. And I attended a really great 3-part session by the Mini Medical School at the University of Minnesota online, and it was all about the environment and about health and wellness and the importance of trees and oxygen. So I'm curious if we have any data, because it also impacts how many trees we have to plant.
That is not something I know. Does anyone else on the call?
Yeah,
you know,
I'm almost certain that we could get that information from the Forestry Department of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. Because that's the entity that manages all trees in our city. And that was responsible for taking down all the trees on public land, and now apparently, you know, they're doing private removal on private land as well. I think that our we have a local person that Ann and I have worked with, who's a forester, Jeff Dostal. And I'd be happy to write to him and ask for that information.
Connie, that'd be great because we treated ours too. We had a tree doctor who came in and treated it. So for 15, 20 years, we had him come in and treat the emerald ash, and it was quite impactful in our household. And so I'm happy to also reach out if that's necessary. But I'd love to know who to call, because it would be helpful with Daniel and looking at how many trees we want to replace for how many have gone in our neighborhood.
Can I just ask, did your ash tree survive? Is it still there, or did?
Oh no, we lost 2 this summer.
So the ones that you had treated for many years? Oh, okay, yeah.
You know, my
Um,
neighbor across the street tried to do an emergency treatment on her ash, and I think it died. We'll have to see what happens in the spring, but I don't think it's going to live. I've never seen a tree look so bad.
No, I think the real question is, Daniel, if these are important questions when you think about oxygen and health and wellness and all that. So
yeah,
that's all. I was just curious. I'm happy to be involved in that capacity if there was a need. And the mini medical school program, I'll put it in the chat.
thank you. Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, because it'd just be interesting as we're thinking about Henry funds and planting trees to understand just how canopy has changed in general. And because I think an original idea, or not, I think an idea someone had at some point was to like try to look at lots that had to cut down trees. So understanding in the broader context how the canopy has changed makes sense to me.
Yeah, and the park board can tell us that, because that's how they're deciding what to plant. You know, they've got a diversity plan, and they have mapped out what they're planting where. So I'd be happy to check with them, because I'm in touch with Jeff on other things as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Connie. Okay. Okay, perfect. Any other questions right now?
I can just mention, Daniel, you know, that event with History Study Group in William Berry Woods that
Yes.
I ran into Peter Sussman, our local historian, down at the lake the other day, and he agreed to do this. He agreed to do a program.
All right.
So it's pretty
That's going to be
exciting.
yellow by next meeting. Love it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, so I let me know what we should do in terms of
Perfect.
setting a date. You know, June might be a nice time, because bird migration will be winding down then.
Sure.
Connie, how is the fundraising for the bird sanctuary piece coming?
Oh, really well. We raised the money that we had to raise. The park board really helped us out, because they allocated $20,000 of the East Harriet Farmstead Parkland dedication fees for this project. And then on top of that, the East Harriet Farmstead Neighborhood Association Board reallocated $10,000 of their neighborhood revitalization funds. So that is over half of what we needed to raise. And then the park board has decided to do the project internally. And even though it means that we have to wait until they get around to it, which is frustrating, because, you know, we wanted it done last year. Even so, it's going to cost us less. So we, you know, some of this, the thing about environmental education. I was going to mention that that is going to be a priority of the Friends of Roberts Bird Sanctuary. And we would love to find out if there are specific programs that Linden Hills would like to see. You know, the programs that we would normally offer would be beginning birding for kids, beginning bugs for kids, you know, birds and botany. So, and we've done tree identification programs in the past. So that would be a fun partnership, so to speak, to find out topics that people would like to have outdoor environmental education in a natural area. And, you know, we are so fortunate to have the two that we have in our neighborhood, that I would be very excited to help with that and to work on that, because I'll be working on it anyway, and we could just try to pull in more input from the neighborhood about what programs they'd like to see maybe.
That'd be great. We could, I mean, if you guys have a survey that you want to put out there, we would be happy to do that. To, you know, put that on our website, e-newsletter, like getting the word out. I feel like that's something a lot of people would be interested in. That's exciting.
Yeah, that would be really helpful to get the word out to families, because we're really looking for family-friendly programs, you know, that to get the kids in, especially the youth, and so if we could partner on publicity, I think we'll probably have to get a schedule in place so that you'd know in advance, and, you know, could plan to publicize it in the line and in the e-news.
Daniel, does this fit under, you have educational, right?
Oh, it totally
here?
does. Yep.
Okay, great. I was like, I didn't mean to hijack
yeah.
anything. I thought I was thinking about William Berry Woods, and then I was thinking about that other project in tandem. I realized they're two different, but aligned.
This is just the start. Yeah, this is great. We did not have a full crew with the holidays in December, so I just wanted to get something in front of us, and we will keep adding to it. Yep, so that definitely makes sense. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, and if anyone else has anything that they feel is missing and that they were excited about that they don't see is on here, feel free to speak up.
Yeah, Daniel. So, and I'm mostly on mute because I'm also, my husband's out this evening, so I'm on baby detail. So yeah, she's here. But one thing I would just like to flag, I don't know if this is the best time for this, but I'd love to, you know, possibly dig in and collaborate on the trolley path. And one area that I think would be worth considering is I love the, you know, the pathway, but I have noticed in using it that sometimes it's hard to cross the street. And so I absolutely love the trolley path as a resource, and just a tremendous community benefit. But that's just been, you know, one observation. I prefer using it almost over the sidewalks that you know, go down 44th. But that was kind of one area I thought could be worth digging into is accessibility, you know, wheelchair access, as well as looking at maybe markings to better alert motorists that you could have people crossing mid-block. And so that was kind of one area that just wanted to kind of flag as an area of interest. And again, I don't know if this is the best place to do that, or if this is the place for it to fit. But that would be, you know, one area that I'd have an interest in, you know, possibly digging into this year and contributing to the committee.
For sure. Yeah, that's great. I think I can tell you a little bit about the history, and anyone else who knows more, feel free to hop in, just because we're looking at something with that recently. And I think what I was told is that the city doesn't allow any mid-block crosswalks. And so they intentionally didn't put access to the road there, and you're actually supposed to go up to the end of the block and cross, is my understanding of it. And so that's just the history that I know. I think that's the reason why it's not better marked, but that is definitely a concern that people bring up. So I think it's still fair to try to ask them about it, especially as we're looking at some other stuff with the trolley path, because you know, how it's used and if it's a safety concern is definitely valid, I think.
That would be great. And happy to, yeah, tap into if there's other folks who have the institutional knowledge. Happy to, yeah, would love to be brought up to speed. So thank you.
Thank you.
You know, one thing I could add, even though this is longer term, Daniel, is that I'd like to think that this concern will be resolved when at some future date, the park board creates this as a continuous path. And they will have the means, you know, to change I believe, the way that the streets play into this. So it might be a temporary thing. Is it anything that you've brought up to our city council member? Have you mentioned it to her?
No, but I think she was the one who might have told me that. if I
Okay,
remember
yeah,
right.
okay. Yeah, well, I wonder then, you know, if, I don't know whose jurisdiction this is, and if we acknowledge that there's a safety concern for crossing, I don't really know, you know, what would be some ideas for, would signage help to encourage people to go up to the corner and cross? Is that something that we should consider?
Could I say something too? Do you mind me interjecting, Connie?
Oh, not at all, Anne.
You know, I think that it's an interesting topic, but I'd also just like to say from the perspective of like being a driver in a car, if you turn the corner, you're not going to expect that in less than like a house, you have to stop again. And where would the cars go? So, I mean, like, I can imagine that's a concern when you're starting to try to think about, you know, either at Zenith or Xerxes, potentially having a crosswalk right after cars have potentially come through a rather, you know, somewhat busy intersection because 44th is busy. So that's simply a comment, because I think that would be difficult if there were a lot of cars, because then they might be backed up in the intersection. In any case, you know, pedestrians, it's also a concern, pedestrian safety. So I think that your idea of signage and saying, you know, if you don't feel comfortable, maybe you should go to 44th and cross is not a bad idea. It's a good idea.
That was my thought too, Anne. You know, just have some signage there that says slow down at those two locations.
You know, nobody stops anyway on 44th. If you've ever
Yeah.
had anyone trying to cross that street, you literally could be at Beard and 44th and have someone come almost hit you. So
Exactly. And when those apartments open and our development down here, it's going to be the same thing. There's going to be even more traffic.
Yeah, and that would be even kind of a broader, you know, area of interest. And Daniel, not to inject a whole new topic, but kind of another area that I think, you know, walkability is one of the, I think, real kind of bright spots for Linden Hills when you look across the Twin Cities. But I think we do have, you know, room to even improve there. And so that would just be something. And again, I don't know if, you know, this is exactly where this lives. But, you know, being able to just kind of enjoy the outside spaces, or even being able to, you know, enjoy the park. You know, that's been kind of something I've been a little surprised that there aren't more crosswalks, even at kind of places where you'd expect to see them. And I think I've become a little more cognizant of it now, carrying around or pushing around a stroller. But just wanted to kind of throw out that. I mean, there's a piece with the trolley path, but then, you know, this could even just be a broader, you know, area of interest.
Yeah, thank you. And Becky, did you have something to add?
Yeah, so let's see, I just want to make sure I'm not muted. Okay. I was gonna change the subject, so I don't want to kind of get in the way, but I did want to mention, Carrie, like you know, and this can be something that this committee talks about, but we have in zoning and our zoning committee meetings, kind of, we've been discussing kind of the evolution of that committee into something that's more of an urban planning sort of group. And so it almost seems to me, it seems like there could be some like crossover in dialogue, especially dealing with the trolley path. But I think overall, talking about like the walkability, that might better live on that committee. And I think that would be something they'd be interested in, like talking about
Well,
with
that
you.
is great feedback. So thank you very much.
No problem. I really, I like the thought process, and I'm just always thinking about where does it make sense to put these different things? And sometimes it makes sense in several areas, because obviously these folks are doing a lot of work with the trolley path and would want to be a part of that discussion, I'm sure. Something I wanted to ask about, Daniel, was just the last initiative on here, the organic recycling for businesses, and just kind of finding out more information about that before I say anything else, but I just was curious.
Yeah, so this has been brought up a handful of times. Becky, we haven't done anything on it yet. I was kind of hoping in our conversation next week, I could learn more about where it's been in the past, which is why I didn't put my name on it yet or anyone else's. I kind of figure this is not going to be something that's done in the next 9 months. It's going to be probably a multi-year effort.
I think it's exciting. I mean, I don't say it in a bad way.
Yeah, no, I am too. But yeah, we haven't made any independent progress on this.
Great. Okay. Yeah, I'm very interested in it on a personal level, and then also thinking about, we do meet with the businesses quarterly, and so that would be another good way of reaching out to them to also gauge their interest in it.
And just an FYI or question, has anybody else had their organic recycling not picked up? This is the second week in a row that they have not picked up the organic recycling from our residential. I intend to call the city to just to report it, but I wondered if anybody else is having that experience in the neighborhood. It was today and last week they didn't pick it up either.
Oh, Jennifer, you're muted.
My goal was to lessen my carbon footprint. And so I did call the city, and I got a letter and I got a packet, but I still haven't gotten my stuff. So I can't answer that question, but I do know that they did respond. And I think a 101 on how to do this might be a fun kind of program for our Linden Hills LHiNC program, because I'm starting from scratch. And I think there might be a lot of people like me in the Linden Hills area who are also starting from scratch.
And that's for organic recycling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I haven't seen bucket yet, but I'm waiting to get it.
Catherine, is your dumpster dug out?
Yeah, I just put it at the end of my drive. I just put it right in the end of my driveway, Ann. And I thought, well, last week, we had all that snow and stuff too. So I thought, well, maybe they just were having trouble getting around and just didn't do it or whatever. So I just pulled it back in my garage, and then I put it out last night for pickup today. And
Wait a minute, pickup was, are you a Tuesday pickup?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and so today when I went out there and came home this evening, they had not picked it up, so I put it back in my garage again. So I'll call them, but I just wondered if anyone else was having that experience. I don't understand why, because I'm on the thoroughfare, as you know.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Well, I see we are almost at time. Any last second comments, questions anyone has before we wrap up? Not seeing any. Okay, I have a couple of people to follow up with, so I'll connect those that I said I would and be in touch as we start to plan some of these things. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight, participating and signing up to take ownership over some of these initiatives. I'm pretty excited about what we have coming.
Oh, thank
And-
you, Daniel, especially for going the extra mile over the, across the world.
No problem. No problem. No, I'm glad I could be here. And next meeting, February 21st, 7 to 8. Hopefully we'll see everyone back here then.
Thanks. Have a great trip. Have a great time.
Thank you.
Yeah, have
Thank you.
fun. All right, I'll talk to you next week, Daniel.
Sounds great. See everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.